Hello, everyone. This is James O'Neill with the Illinois Business Immigration Coalition. We're going to give everybody a few more minutes to get on the line, and we'll be with you shortly. Hello, everyone. This is James O'Neill with the Illinois Business Immigration Coalition. We are going to go ahead and get started in just one more minute. We're giving people an opportunity to log in. We'll be ready to go in just 1 minute. Hello, everyone. I think we're just about ready to get started here. I can see our attendees numbers still going up a little bit, but let's go ahead and get started with the program. As I mentioned, my name is James O'Neill. I'm with the American Business Immigration Coalition as well as the Illinois Business Immigration Coalition. I just want to start out by thanking all of our co-hosts for today's webinar, the Cook County Board, the Illinois Chamber of Commerce, the Illinois Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, the Black Chamber of Commerce of Illinois, the National Partnership for New Americans, and the Illinois Restaurant Association. I would especially like to thank President Preckwinkle, who approached us and really spearheaded putting this webinar together for you guys. In Illinois, I know that my work is primarily focused on the suburbs, and outside of the city of Chicago, there are much fewer resources available to small businesses, which is why I'm particularly grateful to President Preckwinkle for always making sure to include suburban Cook County in all of her decision making. To get us started, though, I want to introduce Rebecca Shih. She is the Executive Director of the American Business Immigration Coalition. She is a woman with an incredible personal story, is a personal hero of mine, and our fearless leader at the American Business Immigration Coalition. Please welcome Rebecca Shih.
Oh, thank you so much, James, and thank you for your incredible work on this webinar and in our work in reaching small businesses in the suburbs. Good morning, everyone. My name is Rebecca Shih, and I'm the Executive Director of IBIC. With chapters in 7 states, our mission has been to achieve sensible federal immigration reform in order to strengthen the U.S. economy and keep families together. With the spread of coronavirus and economic shutdowns, our co-chairs, including John Rowe, Sam Scott, Josh Hoyt, Sam Toya, Raul Raimundo, decided to focus our efforts to ensure that the most vulnerable people are covered in any economic stimulus package. We know that the over 30 million small businesses do not have a powerful lobby in Washington. We also know that small businesses employ over half of all American workers, and absent support, they could be left behind, like many were in 2008. Last night, the U.S. Treasury reported 220,000 loans valued at over $50 billion for the Paycheck Protection Program. The loan amount that the SBA pushed out in the last couple of days equaled what it did in less than 1 year. Over the weekend, we also heard from many ABIC members in many different phases of the process, some being turned away from banks, some in queues waiting for the next steps. 2 small businesses actually told us that their SBA loans were approved and given those loan numbers, but their banks won't disperse the funds until more guidance was given to them from the SBA. As you well know, the motivation behind the Paycheck Protection Program was to allow small businesses slowed or stopped by COVID-19 to continue paying their employees for the next few months by allowing banks to join forces with the SBA and make hassle-free loans to those in need. Of course, the best part of this PPP program is that amounts borrowed could well turn into a grant, completely forgiven, provided the borrower used the funds to cover payroll. As expected, with a rollout of this magnitude, there were speed bumps. A few big banks weren't ready to start processing the application, and of those that were, several wouldn't consider an applicant that didn't have a pre-existing relationship with the bank. Other inconsistencies that plagued the initial rollout included whether employers can count independent contractors or 1099s as payroll costs. We're here today to provide clarity on some of these questions. We're also here today because we are so grateful for President Preckwinkle's leadership and foresight. And we also thank Xochitl Flores, the Director of Economic Development at the county. If the purpose of public dollars invested is to get the greatest return, the county's strategy to get after as much of a share of this federal loan that turns into a grant is a very smart investment. This partnership will provide training and technical assistance to suburban cook and provide, in particular, minority-owned businesses the critical information and assistance they need. Now, according to the SBA, mainstream small businesses have an average of about 8 to 12 week cash flow. Minority-owned Black and brown businesses have a cash flow of around 2 to 3 weeks. Coupled by the fact that big banks are prioritizing only existing customers that have lines of credit or a loan with them, that leaves many of our small minority businesses out. So the goal of this partnership and the goal of this technical assistance is to push out help to businesses that's isolated. Isolated meaning linguistically, unbanked, and rural and suburbs. And the best way is to have trusted providers walk through the process. Ira Kere, our legal director, will walk through the actual application and the process in a little bit. But what we've heard from our members is the actual application is relatively simple. But the issue is that there are a million little technical questions, right? Like, how do you calculate your average monthly payroll? What business types are allowed? Which banks do you go to? And what do you do if you don't currently have an existing line of credit with a bank? And then the last very important step is, how do you actually turn this loan into a grant? So it is for all of these reasons that I'm so honored to partner with Cook County, with the Illinois Restaurant Association, the National Partnership for New Americans, and really want to thank President Preckwinkle for her foresight, for always being a friend to the poor, the marginalized, to the stranger. I've worked with President Preckwinkle since she first came on board, and I've watched her fight for the most neglected among us. And afterwards, when she gets pushback, she even stands stronger with us. So with that, I'm honored to introduce President Preckwinkle.
Well, thank you very much, Rebecca. Thank you for that kind introduction. Thank you, too, as well, James. And before I begin my remarks, I just want to acknowledge Xochitl Flores and her team from our Bureau of Economic Development. They've really done all the hard work to make all this happen. So last week, we announced a partnership with the American Business Immigration Coalition, the Illinois Restaurant Association, the National Partnership for New Americans, to mobilize local chambers of commerce, business associations, and economic development organizations to assist small businesses, nonprofits, and independent contractors access the SBA's Paycheck Protection Program. Today, I'm pleased to participate in and host the first of what I hope will be many webinars with our partners on the Paycheck Protection Program. We need to help interested businesses, not-for-profits, independent contractors, and other organizations apply for these funds. We know that the SBA loans are getting snapped up by larger firms with established banking relationships, as Rebecca said. That's why our efforts are so important. Yesterday, we launched the Cook County Community Recovery Fund, which offers immediate emergency financial assistance. The county has seeded this fund with an initial $10 million. As loans are repaid and as more federal, corporate, and philanthropic resources become available, we intend to continue and expand the program to assist as many suburban small businesses and independent contractors as possible. We also realize that navigating the maze of financial products on the market is extremely difficult. That's why we've also launched the Cook County Technical Assistance Program in partnership with the national and state organizations that are sponsoring this webinar. We're partnering with several of Chicago's leading community development financial institutions to provide a comprehensive package of wraparound services, including business counseling, loan packaging, and intake services. Our partners will help businesses to understand and apply for the Paycheck Protection Program funds, as well as any other resources available to them. This is clearly no ordinary time. Small businesses, gig workers, and entrepreneurs are the heart of municipalities throughout Cook County, and we're doing all we can to support them through this difficult time. To learn more about the suite of services we are offering through the Community Recovery Initiative, please visit www.cookcountyil.gov/recovery. That's www.cookcountyil.gov/recovery. I'm confident that this initiative will help our suburban communities struggling to make ends meet due to COVID-19. Together, we'll work as one Cook County to help you get the resources you need to recover when this is finally over. Thank you all.
Thank you very much, President Preckwinkle, for your leadership on both your programs that you're initiating at the county level and also for helping get the information about the federal programs that are available to small businesses in your county as well. We really appreciate it. It is now my pleasure to introduce one of the most passionate and hardest working people that I've met in my work. A little bit about me personally, I actually have a weekend job at a restaurant in the suburbs, plating food, putting tickets together, and then sending them out of the kitchen. For many of my coworkers, this virus has eliminated their primary or only source of income. And this program will allow them to survive and make it past this crisis and into the back end. And nobody is a better advocate for those coworkers than Sam Toya is, the president and CEO of the Illinois Restaurant Association. So really, without any further ado, I'd like to introduce Mr. Sam Toya to give his thoughts.
Thank you, James and Rebecca and President Preckwinkle and Yoshi, Soshi. We all appreciate everything you're all doing. So 3 weeks ago, the Phase 3 economic stimulus package left out many restaurants and their workers. The IRA started working with Rebecca, the American Business Immigration Coalition, the National Restaurant Association, and the independent restaurant operators across the United States. Thanks to all of us working together, our industry was at the table. We were able to build a broad-based coalition of support, including our associations and independent restaurant operators. In order to help secure definitions of small business and nonprofits that are the most comprehensive and provide the most people relief to restaurants and millions of our employees. We are the largest private sector employer in the state, with more than 588,000 people employed in our industry. We thank President Preckwinkle for her leadership in making sure that businesses and residents across 100+ municipalities in Cook County have access to these resources. The IRA looks forward to continue working with our partners, leaders like President Preckwinkle and SBA, to get cash quickly to our workers and keep our business open. Again, I want to thank everyone on the team. This is definitely a team effort, and I'm very proud to work with all the people that are speaking today. So thank you, and we look forward to helping everyone on the webinar today.
Thank you very much, Sam. Now I get to introduce a close personal friend of mine, Ida Picona, Director of Legal Services at the American and Illinois Business Immigration Coalitions. I'm going to brag a little bit about him because he doesn't like to brag about himself, but he was actually the first DACA licensed attorney in Illinois. In fact, we had to change the law in order to allow him to sit for the bar exam once he was done with law school. And now here he is on webinars speaking to thousands of people over the course of the past few weeks as a leading expert on the Paycheck Protection Program and getting that information out. His story is a testament to hard work, compassion, and how we as individuals are stronger with our allies and how we as a community are stronger when we work together. So Irakere, to walk us through the PPP program, take it away.
Thank you, James, for that nice introduction. And good morning, everyone. This is Irakere Picon, the Director of Legal Services with the Illinois Business Immigration Coalition, a chapter of the American Business Immigration Coalition. And we're going to go through an overview, which happens to be very informative and very detailed about the Paycheck Protection Program as part of the CARES Act for this coronavirus relief package. And so part of the phase 3 funding that was signed into law last week, or rather 2 weeks ago, contained 3 different pots of money. The first one was $10 billion in emergency small business grants, where eligible applicants can get a $10,000 forgivable grant within 3 days of applying for a loan. The second pot of money, which is what we're going to focus on today, is the $350 billion that is part of the Paycheck Protection Act, and then $17 billion to cover 6 months of payments for small businesses who already have SBA loans. So that's generally the 3 pots of money. And then in terms of the Paycheck Protection Program, as I mentioned, it's $350 billion, and we're hearing that that amount will actually increase sometime soon. It's important to note that this program is 100% federally backed, although they are administered through SBA certified lenders. It's the Small Business Administration that is processing sort of the program itself, but it's going through the banks and lenders who are already SBA certified, and it's meant to cover applications between February 15th of 2020 to June 30th, 2020. It's important to understand which businesses are eligible. So this is meant for small businesses, and with the introduction of new language, it also is meant to include nonprofits, independent contractors, sole proprietors, self-employed individuals. But there's a few things you need to know. Whether or not you are a small business depends on either the number of employees that you have or whether you are considered a small business by the SBA. So in terms of determining whether or not you have less than 500 employees, the PPP says that you have to count all full-time, all part-time, and any other employee in a different status. That number goes towards the total count to determine whether or not you have under 500 employees. As I mentioned, whether or not you have, regardless of your employee size, you can still be considered a small business if you are classified as one by the SBA's classification system. For restaurants and businesses within accommodations, there's an exception for this rule wherein even if you have, the 500 employee rule is based on every physical location. So let's say you have multiple franchises, you will be able to separately apply for each of those entities, provided they are under 500 employees, because they are a separate physical location. And as I mentioned, 501c3s and 501c19s are eligible for the PPP. Individuals who operate who are sole proprietors, independent contractors, individuals who get paid and file Form 1099 miscellaneous, troubled business concerns that meet the SBA size standards, and 501c19s, as I mentioned, are also eligible for the PPP. So what will the lender be looking for? The lender will be looking for whether or not the borrower, the applicant, was in operation on February 15, 2020, and whether that applicant also paid a salary or payroll taxes by February 15, 2020. The applicant won't have to give a personal guarantee for the loan. They won't have to provide any collateral for the loan. The only thing the lender should be looking for in terms of whether you're a small business who's eligible or a nonprofit that's eligible is whether you were in operation on 215 and you paid salaries and payroll taxes. In terms of calculating the loan amount, there's a bit of confusion, but hopefully in the example we show in a few slides, it'll help to clarify this. But there's a few different ways to calculate this based on the type of employer that you are. If you are a non-seasonal employer, just a regular employer, you would take your average total monthly payroll costs over the last 12 months and multiply that by 2.5, which is 250% of your payroll costs. And that's meant to cover and give you an extra cushion for the things that aren't being considered as part of the loan amount, which is rent, utilities, any interest on existing debt obligations. For seasonal employers, it's the average monthly payroll cost for a 12-week period beginning either on February 15th of last year or starting March 1st of last year and ending June 30th of 2019. So that's for seasonal employers. And for businesses that were not operational in 2019, it's the average total monthly payroll costs incurred for January and February of this year multiplied by 2.5. So if we go to the next slide, we tried to sort of simplify this into a formula. So in terms of calculating your loan amount, the first step involves adding up all your eligible payroll costs. Step 2 is subtracting all the ineligible payroll costs. Step 3 is dividing that by 12 months to get your monthly average over the last 12 months. And then you, for step 4, you would multiply that by 2.5, and that's how you get your maximum loan amount. So in terms of what are considered eligible payroll costs, so those are considered anything that's a salary, a wage, commission, or similar compensation, payment of cash tip or equivalent, payment of vacation, parental, family, medical, or sick leave, and allowance for dismissal or separation. It also includes payments for group health insurance benefits, including insurance premiums, payment of any retirement benefit, and as well as payment of state or local taxes assessed and compensation of the employee. So all of those are part of the eligible payroll costs that you can include as part of step 1. For individuals who are sole proprietors, independent contractors, self-employed, you have to take the sum of payments of any compensation that is a wage, commission, income, net earnings from some self-employment that is not more than $100,000 in 1 year as prorated for the covered period. In terms of step 2, you have to take into consideration what types of payroll costs are ineligible. So any compensation for an employee that's in excess of $100,000 as prorated for the covered period, which is February 15 through June 15, 2020, that you can't consider as part of your calculation. So if you have an employee that makes $110,000, you can only count up to the $100,000 as prorated for step 1. For step 2, you would subtract the $10,000 that's in excess of that amount. Also ineligible are payroll taxes, railroad retirement taxes, and income taxes. Compensation of an employee whose principal place of business is outside the U.S., qualified sick leave or family leave wages for which a credit is allowed under the Family First Coronavirus Response Act. So these things are examples of payroll costs that are ineligible as part of that formula. So in the example that we have here for 123 Incorporated, this small business has 10 staff, and each staff person is paid $60,000 a year, which equals $600,000 total for those 10 staff. And then you have one staff that gets paid $110,000 a year for $110,000 total over that 1 year. So for total compensation, you're looking at $710,000. But because you have one staff member who makes in excess of $100,000, those $10,000 that's in excess, you would subtract from the total compensation. So you would end up with $700,000 in eligible payroll costs. You take those payroll costs for that year, you divide them by 12, it comes out to roughly a little over $58,000 per month for the last 12 months. You then multiply that amount by 2.5, and the max loan amount that 123 Incorporated could get is $145,833. So that's how roughly you would do the calculation. There's other things you have to consider, but roughly that's what the formula calls for in terms of calculating the maximum loan amount. In terms of asking or applying for loan forgiveness, yesterday we heard from the SBA that the rules and procedures for determining how a business can go about getting the loan amount forgiven is still being worked out. But essentially, the process would require the applicant to apply for loan forgiveness through the lender and prove that the money that was obtained through PPP was used for the allowable uses. If the business is able to provide that information, then the amounts that were used for those eligible uses will be completely forgiven. And so the things that you're allowed to use PPP funding for include payroll costs, costs related to continuing group health care benefits, interest on a mortgage obligation or other debt obligation, rent or lease agreements, utility payments, electricity, gas, water, borrowers with tipped employees, additional wages paid to those employees. These are all things that you can use the PPP funding for, and that as long as you use it for, will have the loan amount forgiven. I want to make a note that a loan forgiveness cannot exceed the principal, so you can't have more forgiven than what the principal of the loan amount was. So just keep an eye on what these allowable uses are. There is a section in the PPP that talks about forgiveness reduction, and this refers to are there any things that could result in your loan forgiveness amount being reduced. So those two things involve a reduction in the number of employees that the business has or the nonprofit has, or if there's a reduction of greater than 25% in wages paid to employees. So some of the questions around this revolve around maybe you have a restaurant, they had to close down at the onset of this emergency, they had to let go of the employees. What happens if they apply for PPP now? So as long as that business rehires their employees by June 30th of 2020, that will not affect the number or the amount of loan that gets reduced under PPP. So as long as you eliminate the reduction of payroll and or number of employees by June 30th, 2020, you should not have any reduction in the amount that is forgiven as part of your PPP loan. In terms of this next slide is just an example of some of the documents and infographics and resources that we've tried to come up with to better help individuals figure out what this process looks like, how to calculate the loan amount. And so if you visit our website at abic.us/COVID-19, you'll see a folder, you'll see the infographics with all the resources, all the guides that we've been able to collect and produce. But obviously, there's a lot of information here. There's a lot of exceptions. Every business is specific. And so it's important to talk to your team internally. And Luis from the National Partnership for New Americans will discuss how your business or your nonprofit can start to prepare internally for this PPP program.
Yeah, thank you, Irakere. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining today's webinar, and a special thank you to President Preckwinkle and Xochitl Flores for your leadership in making sure nonprofits and small businesses in Cook County have access to these important resources. So we know there might be a lot of questions about how our organizations and small businesses can begin to prepare and what is needed. So our general recommendation is looking at this preparation moment in 3 steps that you can see here on your screen. So step number 1 will be to prepare internally within your organizations. Number 2 is to identify your financial institution and your lender. And number 3, reviewing the application and gathering the necessary documents to apply. So we'll go into each one of these steps in a little more detail. So for step number 1, the organizing your internal communications and preparing internally is we suggest that you contact your organization's payroll person who will have information on related payroll expenses. Your payroll platform should be able to generate a report with your monthly payroll average costs for the previous year. So for example, if your organization uses ADP, it will generate a payroll report specifically for this grant. And it's important to note that you don't need to show any revenue loss since that is not needed for this particular program. And you may already know this, but you will need to confirm your organization's IRS or nonprofit status. And so Irakere talked about that in terms of being a 501c3 or a C19. And another important point for nonprofit organizations is to keep in mind your governance structure, since nonprofits will likely have to engage your board of directors or finance committee or your board treasurer or other organizational leadership members to make an informed decision about this application process. So for step number 2, identifying your financial institution and your lender, we need to make sure that you have a lender or a lead contact at your bank or credit union. This is a very important first step. It's important that we establish a relationship with our current lender or reaching out to them to ask them if they are a certified SBA lender. The Secretary of the Treasurer and the SBA can facilitate the certifying of new lenders that are not currently SBA certified. So it's important that we find out if our existing bank is providing the Paycheck Protection Program loans. And it's important also to note that many banks will have specific customer requirements. So for example, some financial institutions may require you to be an existing customer, or non-new customers' applications will be accepted by certain banks. So you may need to be a current customer for a certain amount of time or have an existing checking account. So these are examples, but it's important to immediately reach out to your financial institution, whether it's a bank or a credit union, to ask if they are already providing these loans. And for the last step for the application updates and the timeline, the Payroll Protection Program application went live the last Friday on the SBA website. So it is available for all of you to review right now. It is important to note that each bank will have their own requirements, like we mentioned, and may ask you to submit additional documentation for their own purposes. So if you look at the application that is available online, there's a pretty straightforward process, but the first piece is reviewing your eligibility and check off if you are a sole proprietor, a partnership, a C Corp, an S Corp, or an LLC, or a 501c3. And then you need to fill out basic information such as business name, address, EIN number, and other information like that, and calculating the average monthly payroll costs. And remember that some of these numbers may already have be available in your payroll platforms. And then there's a section that you'll need to answer a few yes or no questions. And there's also a section where companies and nonprofits will need to provide ownership information, and this section will be a little bit different for nonprofits versus small businesses, since we know that nonprofit organizations do not have an owner, and so we need to make sure that we're gathering all the core evidence that needs to be submitted within the application. So those are things such as the IRS Form 941, the health insurance premiums from 2019. And then also state and local payroll taxes for 2019, and any other additional information that your bank may request. So once you have filled out the application needs to be submitted to your banker directly. So it does go to your existing lenders. And some banks already have the application online, so those can also be submitted online. But I know some banks or smaller credit unions may require different process. So as a reminder, if you have not applied and are interested in applying for the PPP, it is important that you contact your bank immediately and find out if they are accepting the SBA 7A applications for the Payroll Protection Program. And you can find a hard copy of the application on the Treasury website. You can also see it on your screen, a sample of the form. And we will also be sharing this link and the application after this webinar in the notes. So thank you, and we'll be answering some questions in the next few minutes.
Thank you very much, Luis, and thank you again to Iraquere Picon for going through the program with us. Really quickly, before we get into some Q&A, I do want to mention that you can submit questions. We've already gotten a bunch, and I've been taking notes on them as they come in. I've gotten a lot of questions about whether this webinar will be available. We will be sending out a recording of the webinar once it's concluded, either tomorrow morning or later in the day today. So you will get a recorded copy of the webinar as well as a PDF of the slides. So for those of you asking about those two things, those will be made available to everybody that registered for the webinar. So joining us for Q&A, we have Iraquere Picon, we have Rebecca Shee, who spoke earlier, and we also have Xochitl Flores from Cook County and the Committee on Business Development. Let's just go ahead and jump right into the questions. First question, I'll give it to Iraquere. My business is less than a year old. Can I still apply for this program?
Yes. So as long as you are in business or in operation on February 15 of 2020 and you paid salary and payroll taxes, then you are eligible for the PPP. And you would have to provide the payroll costs for, well, you would use January and February of this year's payroll costs to calculate your loan amount. But as long as you were in operation on February 15th of 2020 and you have proof that you paid salary and payroll taxes, then you are eligible for PPP.
Thanks, Iraquere. This one is for anybody. My bank denied my application because I do not already have a loan with them. What are my options?
I can jump in. This is Becca Shee. So this is an issue that we've heard repeatedly since the program opened on Friday. So you're definitely not alone. And also what's happening to you is against the law that passed, the CARES Act. The legislative intent for the Paycheck Protection Program is to get funds and cash quickly to our small businesses and their workers to be able to survive. And so we need all of your help, right, to continue to make your voices heard with your member of Congress, with our senators, as this program is being improved and rolled out. Because at the end of the day, many of these banks are getting big bailouts themselves like they did in 2008. And the Paycheck Protection Program, these funds are our taxpayer dollars. They're also federally guaranteed, right, to these banks, so that the fact that they're prioritizing customers that have existing lines of credit loans with them is not correct. So please, keep connected to Cook County, keep connected, right, to Xochitl, the president, and our webinar and technical assistance series, so that we can get information out to you, and also, call your member of Congress, and then just keep going to your bank. The other recommendation I have, just, for this week, right, as we're getting a lot of these issues worked out, is that if you have another bank that say like holds your business account. So some business owners have a bank that maybe they have a loan with, and then they have other banks that they hold a business account or have a credit card with. I will go to every one of them and just say, can you allow me to apply for the PPP program. And particularly, we found that community-based banks have been a lot more open than some of these larger banks. The president spoke earlier about CDFIs. So we're in the process of actually bringing them on board in the pipeline of lending for PPP so that they can be an official lender. And, we know that they're the banks for a lot of our small and minority-owned businesses. So we should actually get guidance on that on Friday. So, don't be dejected and keep making your voices heard. Keep getting connected to this technical assistance, and then just like many of us have to be an aggressive consumer when it comes to our healthcare system. This is going to be the same thing with our banking system. If you have partners in your business and they also have different sets of banks, go to them. And then by Friday, we should get clarity on CDFIs. And then once CDFIs are on board, that's going to open up lots of different opportunities for our unbanked business owners and nonprofits. So thank you for that question. And it's really important and frustrating. So thank you.
Thanks, Becca. I've got a question for Soshi here. I am a business owner in Melrose Park. Can I apply for Cook County business loans, and where would I go to do that?
Thank you. This is Soshi, and the program that we announced yesterday is getting finalized with our partner, the Chicago Community Loan Fund. I encourage you to go to the county's website, and there is an interest form that can be filled out so that you get information as soon as we deploy our loan program. It'll be rolled out later this month. We're hoping within the next 2 weeks.
Thank you, Soshi. I have a question for Irakere. How fast can we expect this money to be dispersed?
So Becca at the top of the call mentioned that just on our webinar yesterday, we took a poll of all the attendees, and based on that poll, at least one applicant had already gotten the loan amount from the PPP. So the application was released last Friday, and I believe that their hope was to get the money out to businesses within 2 to 3 weeks of the loan application. So I'm sure as we get more and more banks starting to process these applications, the faster we're going to start seeing the money be issued. As Becca also mentioned, there have been issues with lenders and inconsistencies among the different banks as to what the process looks like and whether some are ready, some are not, and so that's also going to determine how fast that application gets processed and sent to the SBA to get that check cut. But hopefully within 2 to 3 weeks of loan application, you should be getting those funds. I do want to reiterate that as part of the CARES package, there is another pot of money through the Economic Injury Disaster Loan, wherein if a business or a nonprofit applies for that economic injury loan, automatically you get qualified to receive a $10,000 emergency grant that you don't have to repay. Even if you get rejected for the loan, you still don't have to pay back those $10,000. So that's emergency money that can be used now to pay operational costs, payroll, rent, anything that has to be paid off immediately. So that's a separate pot of money that businesses can also apply for while they wait for PPP to come through.
This is a question for anybody. I'm sort of rolling 2 questions into one here, but this question is, I was laid off my primary job. My secondary job is as an independent contractor. And as an independent contractor, I don't have any employees. Can I apply for this program for my own self?
So for independent contractors, you will be able to file your own PPP application. And even if you don't have employees, for independent contractors, you can submit proof of compensation that you've received over the last year, as long as it's not more than $100,000. So any wage, commission, income, net earnings from self-employment or as an independent contractor, so long as it's not more than $100,000 in 1 year, you can apply for PPP as a independent contractor.
Sorry, this is Becca. In addition to that, the independent contractors can start applying on Friday. So there was a delay in the rollout to accept independent contractors. So that when the Treasury released their guidance on Tuesday, it clarified that on Friday, independent contractors can start applying. The other thing that clarified is that that employers cannot have independent contractors in 1099s used to calculate their average monthly payroll, right? Like that loan grant amount. So you can cover your full-time employees, part-time employees, but not your independent contractors. So our assumption, and speaking to our lawmakers in SBA and Treasury, is that this is going to hurt a lot of our minority-owned businesses or Black and Brown businesses because of all the independent contractors our minority-owned businesses have on their payroll, right? While it's good that they can apply on their own, our assumption is that given how difficult this lending process has been for the business owner, that the independent contractors will face similar, if not greater, challenges. And so I think that, just to let folks know that we're paying attention to this, and that as you may be an independent contractor listening to this webinar, and I just want to point out we have over 800 people actually on this webinar. So if you are an independent contractor and you're sort of, out there in the world and applying on Friday, and there's, we're expecting, I think, a lot of issues as well, just please do let us know. And reconnect with us, because that's the other thing we're going to push is that if this is not going to work out, it's going to be a mess, which is what our assumption is, then we're going to fight to ensure that in the next round of Treasury guidance, we get our independent contractors and our 1099s covered under the owner's payroll as well. So anyways, I just wanted to kind of clarify that too.
Thanks, Becca. I'm again wrapping a couple of questions into one here, but I do my business banking with several banks. How do I determine which bank is best to apply with? And can I apply to several banks at the same time to see who responds first?
I could jump in. So again, my recommendation is completely based on what our members have told us since Friday, right? So in generally, there's a lot of difficulties and confusion with banks in this process, but it seems like that the community banks or the local banks are doing a more streamlined and efficient process for our small business owners. And particularly if they are, kind of their sweet spot is between that $50,000 to $250,000 loan, that they'll turn you around very quickly and not make you go through unnecessary hoops. Now, if your bank is like a Chase or Bank of America, right? We've also heard, they're much more used to and comfortable and sort of prioritizing customers that have $1 million, $5 million, $10 million in terms of loans. So and then in terms of their economic incentives, like that's who they're prioritizing, and kind of the little guys are in the back of the queue, right? So just understanding that picture, I think if one of your three banks happens to be a local community bank, I would recommend going to them first, but it doesn't hurt to go, to everybody. And then, the work that Sochi and the president has done is just so critical, right? Even when we don't have the guidance yet, and hopefully we'll get it on Friday, really just moving our CDFIs into the network already and get them quickly, right, to start giving these 7A loans to our small businesses. So that would be my general recommendation.
Thanks, Becca. I have another question for Sochi. How much money will a business be able to apply for with the Cook County grants once it's finalized?
So our program will be on a first come first served basis, and it will be up to $20,000 for a small business and up to $10,000 for independent contractors.
Great, thank you. A few more questions here. I have a seasonal business. Can I still apply even if I only have employees for less than 3 months out of the year?
So under the PPP, seasonal employers are eligible to apply for this funding. And what you need to show is that is the average monthly payroll cost for a 12-week period going back to last year, which starts either on 2/15/2019 or March 1st, 2019. That's at the option of the borrower. But the 12 weeks either starts on 12/15/2019 or March 1st, 2019 and ends June 30th, 2019. So you have to look back to your a very small window going back to last year's payroll costs, but seasonal employers are eligible for PPP funding.
Great, thank you. And I believe this next question is also probably best for Irakere as well. It's kind of a two-part question because I'm combining again. I applied and my application was accepted and I've received an SBA tracking number. What does that mean? And then there's also a question that I've applied, my application was accepted, but I do not yet have an SBA tracking number. What should I do?
In terms of the SBA tracking number, that's the number that is assigned by the SBA for applications that are in a waiting sort of queue. So the PPP is also first come, first serve, and as soon as the application gets submitted to the bank and the bank processes it, the SBA will issue a confirmation number, a tracking number, and that will tell you where in line that application is in. So if you've applied for PPP and your bank has not issued you a confirmation number or given you a tracking number, I would suggest you call the bank back and ask to get that number as soon as possible, as soon as they get it, as soon as the application gets processed. But yeah, that's sort of the way this mechanism is working right now.
Can I just add, so the E-Tran system that the SBA uses to spit out these numbers was down Tuesday, Wednesday. Oh, sorry, Tuesday. So today is Wednesday, right? So it was down yesterday. And so if you haven't received anything, go back, like Irakere says, go back to your lender today. And they, you may get something today, but that number is really important. And I just want to also emphasize the more lenders we bring into the pipeline, like CDFIs and, so like Seaway Bank, for example, that services a lot of the suburban Cook is a CDFI, services a lot of our Black and brown businesses. And so the more of these lenders we get in the pipeline, you'll be able to get, you're tracking these tracking numbers more quickly, right? Because they're a lender that our communities currently benefit from. The other thing I would just mention for all of these host of issues, I know sometimes like our member of Congress or senators just seem really removed and really far away. You can also, but you might know your local mayor, you might know, right, the mayor of Cal City or Burnham or Maywood, right? And so if you're comfortable with your mayor or your representative, so, over the weekend, our team was helping Ms. Armstrong, who owns Chapapin Gourmet Popcorn in Westchester, Illinois, and we got connected because of Representative Chris Welch, and it's one of the best, kind of most civically minded businesses in his district, and it's just she's had it for 20 years. There's a beautiful story. Anyway, so she's trying to apply for the PPP. And she talked to Rep Welch, and and because of just the challenges she had with Chase, we were able to make sure that her difficulties, right, gets reported both to our lawmakers, people at the Treasury, the SBA, and also in the press, right? So the more that we kind of really smoke this process out, the better it is for everybody, especially our minority-owned business. And because the president has now gotten the commissioners, right, all organized around this too. Talk to your commissioner, right, your local commissioner. So whichever level of government body that you're comfortable connecting with, contact them, right? Then we can make sure that these problems are fixed as quickly as possible. So that's the other suggestion I have, to a lot of these questions that we're in it together. We got to fight together, right? Because these are about our businesses and families, and our elected officials at every level can hold a lot of these banks accountable. So.
Thanks, Becca. This is a question I actually have not seen before, so anybody that wants to jump in can. My business issued hiring packets to some new employees, and we had to delay the hiring process because of the virus to cover other costs. Can we include the salaries that would have been included in our PPP application?
So for the loan amount calculation, so I guess there's two questions there. One, are they currently hired? Are they employed by you? And does that number impact the limit in terms of 500 employees for purposes of being considered a small business? If they're not hired, you're thinking about hiring them, can you use what you would have paid them to use in the loan amount calculation? So if you have not paid out any payroll, any wages, any compensation to an employee in the last 12 months, then anything you haven't paid in the last 12 months can't be included in the loan calculation amount. So you can only look backwards 12 months to determine how much of a loan, how much of an amount can you get to the PPP. That's sort of the easy answer. There might be some more intricacies there, but one is if those employees have been hired, does that put you above the 500 employee threshold? If they haven't been hired, but you're wanting to include their salary or wages as part of the loan amount, you can only do so if you already paid out wages and compensation for those employees in the last 12 months. So it could have been, in this last month, did you pay anything for them? If so, then you can include those wages and salaries as part of the loan calculation.
Great. I have two more questions. First one here, I have applied to both EIDL or Economic Injury Disaster Loans and PPP. Is that allowed?
Yes, you are able to apply for both EIDL, so the Economic Injury Disaster Loans, and the loan advance or the grant of $10,000, and apply for PPP. However, you're not allowed to use funds from both programs to pay the same expense. So if you got an EIDL grant and you used that money to pay for wages in April, you can't use PPP to also pay wages for April. You would have to use it for a different month or different costs like rent or utility. So as long as you don't use them for the same expense or cost, you are able to receive and use money from both pots of money.
All right, and we're running out of time a little bit, so let's do one more question. This is just asking for a little clarification. I have an LLC. Do I include my 1099 contractors in my average monthly payroll calculation, or do they need to apply separately?
So based on the guidance that we received from the SBA and the Treasury Department, employers are not eligible to use any compensation paid out to 1099s or independent contractors as part of that employer's payroll calculation. So those independent contractors, because they are eligible for PPP by themselves, would have to submit their own application for any compensation that was lost as part of this pandemic. So employers cannot include independent contractors in their payroll calculation.
Thank you, Irikere. All right, so just to finish up here, IBIC is partnering with several chambers and several business associations across the state to put on webinars like this one, specifically ones that are a little bit more tailored to certain industries. So our plans include one for nonprofits and religious institutions, a specific one for restaurants, for manufacturers, and for chambers of commerce, and how people in those industries can access and apply for this funding. I would again like to extend a huge thank you to all of our co-hosts, and a special thank you to Cook County President Toni Preckwinkle for joining us. I'm not sure why it appears that the website for Cook County is cut off of this slide, but it is www.cookcountyil.gov/recovery. I'll say that one more time, www.cookcountyil.gov/recovery. So that concludes our program for today. Thank you everybody so much for joining us. I hope this was helpful. Please feel free to reach out to us on our website, abic.us, with additional questions, and we will be sending out this presentation as well as the slides to everybody later today or early tomorrow. I appreciate everybody's time, and thank you for joining us.